Good morning, everyone, again, and welcome to the webinar series, Innovation for Sustainable Development Goals, Inspirational Tools Towards Sustainability Challenges, an event organized by the sectoral hubs of the University of Girona in collaboration with the Global University Network for Innovation, CUNY. This is the fourth out of 6 two-hour seminars organized by the UDG and the CUNY to debate and advance towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. The importance of organizing this event is due to the UDG commitment to take action in front of the emergency of directing researchers' interest towards solving SDGs challenges, as well as interacting with different agents and detecting needs and opportunities in the territory and worldwide. During 2 weeks, from the 15th to the 26th of March, experts will cover various topics, all related to the SDGs and their achievement. The first part of the series started with webinars related to sustainability and science, co-creation and responsible research, and the SDGs and communication and advocacy for the 2030 agenda. Sessions covering regenerative tourism and disruptive robotics for nature will take place tomorrow and Friday, respectively, representing a vast array of disciplines and challenges. Each presentation is providing ideas to promote knowledge transfer and to overcome obstacles regarding the attainment of the SDGs. Thus, we thank you for attending this webinar and we encourage you to participate in as many sessions as possible. Your knowledge and perspective are most welcome and will enrich the discussions. Before we introduce today's speakers, let me share some brief housekeeping information for a smooth running session. A brief reminder about the sessions being recorded. Once the session is finalized, it will be uploaded to the event's website and will be shared with those who could not attend the event. Regarding questions for panelists, please write them in the Q&A section of Zoom. This will be shared with the speakers after their presentation or at the end of the event. Also, and in order to address you, please make sure your name is written correctly. And last but not least, if you wish to publicize the events via social media, we encourage you to do so by using the following hashtags: hashtag UDG for SDGs or hashtag GUNI SDGs. My colleagues will share this hashtag in the chat for sure. Now that we all know how to virtually engage, and without further ado, let's introduce today's topic and speakers. So today, even though, strictly speaking, the celebration of the World Water Day, as you know, was only yesterday, water is so crucial for ecosystems and human life that we should always protect and manage it a bit more wisely every day, day and day. Therefore, we'd like to dedicate today's seminar to speak about wise water management in cities. Under the title of Wise Water Management in Cities, the diverse and inspiring presentations of Corinne, Trommsdorff, Regina, Gnirss, and Joana Castellar, the 3 speakers today, will highlight emerging opportunities as well as unveil challenges to reflect upon and pave the way for future and innovative projects. So let's start with first speaker. Let me introduce you our first speaker today, Corinne Trommsdorff. She is CEO and founder of Water Cities, whose mission is to support local stakeholders in their transition towards water-wise management based on the ICRA Water-Wise Cities principles. After her master's in agriculture science and environmental engineering from Agro-Paris Tech, Corinne specialized in urban water and specifically in holistic urban water management, the value of wastewater in the circular economy, and energy optimization of water and sanitation services. After 15 years as project manager in consulting firms in the USA, Switzerland, and France, Corinne worked 5 years for the International Water Association, the ICRA, in the ACT, to promote reflection on the necessary transitions for sustainable water management in cities and their catchment areas around the world. So Corinne will explain today the principle of water-wise cities, and will explain also some real examples of its application. So the virtual floor is yours, Corinne. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Quim. Let me share my screen so that you can all see my presentation. Okay. So can you see the presentation? Yeah, perfect.
Yes, perfect.
So I wanted to talk to you about water-wise cities, driving progress towards and beyond the SDGs today. Just to give you a little bit of context on what I'll be talking about, I've split our time together in 3 parts. The first part will be about context and some introduction on the IWA principles for water-wise cities. In the second part, I'd like to take you on a trip, a little bit of a world tour around a few cities around the world that are on the journey to being water-wise cities. And in the last part, I'd like to talk about a few tools that can be used to assess cities and in order to identify the problems based on that expression, you can't fix what you don't see. So let's get started with that part 1. My grandparents focused their lives on making sure they had enough to live and a secure place. My parents had the chance to start their lives with not much and grow into a more and more comfortable life. I'm lucky to have been born into a comfortable life, but I grew up to realize we can't just use up resources. We need to protect our wonderful planet. And now my teenage kids only talk about what they will do later to use less resources, produce less waste, pollute less, and ensure bees stay alive. Society has gone through a slow transition over the years. Cities and their water and wastewater services are at the heart of it. We have evolved our cities from being secure cities where citizens have enough water to focus their energy on developing their businesses, to livable cities where citizens thrive, to sustainable growth cities where citizens demand ways to reduce their footprint and care for protecting resources for their kids' future. We're not fully at this last stage, but the transition has started, and it is essential as cities are becoming bigger and bigger. All global agendas go in this direction, urging national governments to take action. The SDGs and the new urban agenda, though directed at national governments, cities are the implementers. These agendas urge city stakeholders to think about all 3 challenges at once, so that the new projects deliver secure, livable, and sustainable growth cities. Wise water management is an underlying success factor for all the SDGs. Indeed, water is either impacting or impacted by most of the SDGs. Here are just a few examples. Water sustains business for economic growth. Water contributes to safe and secure cities. Water contributes to health by reducing waterborne diseases, but also through the connection to nature it brings and the associated psychological health benefits. The real challenge is not SDG 6, it's to implement SDG 6 and deliver on all those other contributions to water to the other goals. I'd like to share 3 paradigm shifts that underlie the management of water in cities. The first one is that resources are limited within our planetary boundaries, and we have limited water availability within a catchment. The second is that cities are growing, and city densification is both an opportunity for economic growth and a threat to livability. And the third one is that an uncertain future underlies the planning of our cities, mostly due to climate change. So resources are limited. We can feel doomed by this statement or feel optimistic. I was just listening to an interview of Bill Gates last week, and he is a man that inspires me a lot. He has faith in the capacity of human beings to develop approaches and technologies that will support a reasonable level of comfort for all, without overexploitation of resources, but relying on the transition to circular economy. And a lot of the work that you do here in the University of Girona supports this transition. It's about thinking differently about water, not only as a resource that is used in a linear manner, but as a productive resource. How can the same amount of water serve more people and industries? How can the role of water as waste carrier be the beginning of new resource factories? Cities are growing and densifying. The risk of this evolution is a reduced quality of life. That is caused by many things, such as costs of living, the transport issue, air quality, and many more. Water, however, can become an asset in improving the well-being through cooling, bathing opportunities, or just walking along waterways. A third paradigm shift. Climate is changing, causing us to change our planning approach so that we can embrace the uncertainties in design parameters. But it's also making us realize that we need to take action to reduce the impacts human activities are having on our planet. During the COP in Madrid, these slogans were everywhere on the walls, urging to action. Even though the COP is about governments discussing and agreeing on a way forward to reduce emissions, these slogans were aimed at the population. They were in the Madrid subway. The tricky thing with greenhouse gas emissions is that they come from many activities and just add up. Nobody feels responsibility for the whole problem, and nobody feels that their own action can contribute to solving the problem. This diffuse impact of individual actions has led us to that climate emergency. The objective of the 2015 Paris Agreement on climate change is to limit global warming to well below 2, preferably 1.5 degrees Celsius, compared to pre-industrial times. But we're not on track. The estimates are that there is a 20% chance that global warming will actually reach 1.5 degrees already in the next 5 years. At the end of the century, warming might reach up to 4 degrees, according to some models. The impact on water resources are already happening, as displayed in the subway of Madrid during the COP that we're mentioning desertification. Precipitations are anticipated to change, with annual averages reducing in many areas and more frequent intense rain events pretty much everywhere. Generally, the consequences of climate change are too much water, too little water, to dirty water, and increased needs for cooling and well-being of people in cities. The three challenges of secure, livable, and sustainable growth cities, together with the three paradigm shifts of limited resources, growth and densification of cities, and the need to embrace uncertainty, are all addressed as a whole in the principles for water-wise cities. The IWA principles for water-wise cities are the expression of thought leadership of IWA members and beyond, water and urban professionals who summarized a shared vision of what sustainable urban water is. The principles now create a common language to share and learn faster across countries. Locally, the principles are being used to rally urban stakeholders around a shared vision on sustainable urban water, to strengthen the collaborative actions across disciplines and scales, and sometimes also across political parties. The narrative is that urban livability and resilience depend on the development of regenerative water services and water-sensitive urban design, together with a recognition that water security often depends on having basin-connected cities. These three levels rely on the support of a water-wise community, that outer circle, citizens, leaders, and professionals working hand in hand along the 5 building blocks for action, which are a shared vision, a governance that enables collaboration, knowledge and capacities, planning tools that enable systems thinking, and implementation tools such as contracting models or regulations. Since the Brisbane launch in October 2016, the principles were endorsed by 32 urban areas around the world and many more organizations. Now, I'd like to show you a short movie from IWA that will run you through each of the principles, as the movie can do that a lot more efficiently than I would. So let me just do a little thing here so that I can actually share the movie with you. Give me a second. I'll start the movie. I just need to share the right screen. And here you go. Is that working? Thank you for listening to that nice music in the movie. I hope that helped you see what the principles are about. Now we are at a crossroads. We either stay on the business as usual road, using water in a linear way, with silos between professional sectors, continuing to plan our future based on past data. Or we train our engineers, and not only the students, to approach problems in a holistic, multi-dimensional way that the SDGs inspire us to do. And to realize that water and sanitation professionals have a lot more to contribute to sustainable development than Goal 6 by itself, to address all the issues we just talked about. As we choose that road, we also educate our decision makers, we inform regulators, and we inspire citizens to all play their part in making water-wise cities happen. So before we move to the second part of this presentation now, I'd like to take a quick poll to get a sense for how you feel about the environment you work in. So we'll give you a minute to answer these two questions. On a scale from 1 to 5, how close is the urban environment you work in to approaching issues with this water-wise vision? And the second question, how close are you from having all the tools you need to run your projects according to this water-wise vision? So 1 is no tools to support water-wise, or not close to water-wise at all. And 5 is the closest to water-wise, having tools that embrace the water-wise vision. Maybe we can look at the results. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so quite a distribution between the different results, but pretty much the grade 3 is what the one that had the most answers. So most of you feel you're halfway there. You already have quite a few a work environment that embraces that vision and the tools you need, but there's still a ways to go. So that's great. I mean, we've been talking about these water-wise cities for the last 5 years now. So it's really good to see that a lot of you feel you're getting there, but there's still ways to go. Now, to continue on our session, I'd like to take you on a little bit of a world tour and show you a few examples of cities that are on the journey to water-wise cities. We'll go to San Francisco, Sydney, and Cape Town, illustrating each of the levels of actions of the principles. We'll start with a quick reminder on the first level of action, regenerative water services for all. This first level of action is about transforming water into a productive resource that does not take from nor put back in the environment more than what it can give or take. It's about considering that all waters are a resource, reducing the energy and water consumption, reducing GHG emissions, reusing and recycling water and the things it carries, so the organics and the nutrients, implementing an adaptive planning approach that sets a target, for example, no more fossil fuel, and then looks at the many possible paths to get there, choosing the one that leaves the most options open for adapting to future opportunities and change. It's about working in synergy with other sectors to maximize all of the above. Now let's take the case of San Francisco. It has an integrated utility responsible for water, sanitation, and energy, and servicing 2.7 million people. Its challenges are floods and droughts, significant population growth, and limited and distant water resources. You have to think that 85% of their water comes from more than 250 kilometers away. So these local issues have led them to implement a policy to reduce consumption over the last 25 years. And more recently, their local issues are pushing them to diversify their resources and increase their resilience to future crises. They are developing an integrated approach to all waters in their service areas, including energy. And they're adopting a fit-for-purpose approach to enable lower quality water to be used for non-drinking purposes in irrigation, but also in buildings. Their integrated vision is called One Water SF. It combines the local reuse of recycled water, rainwater and nutrient recovery, and solar energy production on rooftops, as well as the production of biogas from digestion of organics. What is interesting about this approach is that it reduces the pressure on the environment through reducing the water demand, how much water is taken, and reducing the impact of effluents with lower quantities being discharged and less pollutants being discharged from rainwater runoffs as well. They have two models of water recycling. One centralized recycling that produces the recycled water at the treatment plant, and it's for use by large customers, such as golf courses, parks, street cleaning. They also have a decentralized approach that they've tested between 2012 and 2015. And since 2015, the recycling of gray water is mandatory on any building over 23,000 square meters. So fairly large buildings, but still it has become mandatory. And they've published a purple pipe and gray water recycling manual that is available now for all land developers working on new buildings. With this mindset of diversifying their resources, they're implementing rainwater and gray water recovery for non-potable uses, both at small and large scale. Recycling and rainwater harvesting on new large buildings has required the development of a whole new building code and collaboration with regulators to make the regulations evolve. We see that these strategies require us to rethink the way we design our buildings in cities, which naturally brings us to the second level of action. That second level of action is about thinking the way we design our cities in a way that allows us to embrace water as a resource for survival, for the essential needs, but also for well-being. Continuing our world tour, I'd like to take you to Sydney. The utility is an integrated water and sanitation utility serving 4.3 million people. Their challenges are population growth, declining water sources, and urban heat and flooding. It's on that last point that I'd like to focus this example today. Sydney is facing the growing problem of urban heat and flooding. In response, they have developed their blue-green strategy which reduces heat and flooding and increases the well-being of residents. This is just an illustration of what exacerbates the heat problem in urban areas. If the only materials present are tiles and concrete, the heat is extreme. And when vegetation increases, like in the peri-urban areas or in urban parks, the ambient heat is reduced. Here's an illustration of their flooding problem. And let's take a closer look at their strategy itself. It's divided into two complementary axes. The green corridors, which overall objective is to increase the planted areas to decrease the urban heat. And the blue corridors, which role is to support these green corridors and to increase the presence of visible water in the city. Now, visible water is important because it creates cultural and social connections. And the well-being of the residents, of the population, relies on those opportunities. So water plays a role way beyond its cooling effect in the well-being of people, in the scenery it creates for people, and the sense of belonging to a place. These green corridors and the addition of visible water has created what they call heat refuge. The actions implemented in the inner city of Sydney have reduced the average temperature by 1.3 degrees Celsius and the peak temperature up to 6 degrees. So it's quite helpful. And the addition of trees in residential areas significantly reduces the temperature, as you can read on that slide there. And this is what it looks like in pictures. Now, to allow for so much green space in the context of a limited resource, the city has developed rainwater storage for park irrigation during dry periods. And this rainwater storage also helps to reduce the flooding and limit the stormwater overflows, which in return helps improving the water quality of the bay. Sydney is transitioning from the traditional silo approach to an integrated approach they call water-sensitive cities in Australia. It's about putting water at the heart of urban development and taking into account all the co-benefits that water management can bring. This type of approach allows to increase well-being and security in relation to flooding and water scarcity risks. But to truly ensure safety from water-related risks, the city must work hand in hand with its basin, which brings us to the third level of action. Oops. A basin-connected city is when a city fully accounts for the capacity and water usages within its basin. That enables a better sharing of the resource, a better anticipation of the risks of lacking of water or flooding, and it enables preserving the quality of the resource. To illustrate this level of action, I'd like to continue our world tour and take you to Cape Town in South Africa. The utility there is a water and sanitation utility and serves 4.3 million people. Their challenges are population growth, informal urbanism, water resources highly dependent on rainfall, aging infrastructure, and social issues such as poverty, inequality, unemployment. But today, I'd like to focus on the dependency on the rain for their water resources. I propose that we go through what Cape Town had done to put in place some mechanisms before their 2018 droughts that we all still have in our heads. And then what they've also learned as a follow-up from this drought. First of all, Cape Town's water supply depends on 6 dams, which are all highly dependent on rainfall recharge, with only 12% of their resources coming from either groundwater or desalination. They were well aware of their vulnerability and started a strategy to reduce their per capita water demand since 2010 in order to accommodate the city's planned growth without increasing the capacity of the drinking water system intakes. We can see the result on this curve. Their strategy had brought them to 150 liters per capita per day consumption. And the flattening of the curve is the result of a large number of measures that are all listed here on that slide that have worked in synergy. It's not just about fixing leaks, but it's also about working on tariffs, engaging customers. This strategy was successful, but it wasn't quite enough. The reservoir levels kept decreasing between 2013 and 2017 because annual rainfall also became much lower than in the previous years. So in 2017, they activated their crisis management plan, which they had already prepared ahead of time. They launched a public communication campaign to reduce water production to 100 liters per person per day, so reducing it by 30%. Then they announced the countdown towards day 0 to encourage all users to make an effort to reduce. These are images of the communication campaign to make users aware of the restrictions. But the reservoirs were continuing to drop, so finally they activated the level 6 of the crisis, and they informed the population of what would happen to water distribution after day 0. And we've all seen some of those images in the news because that made world news. That day ultimately did not happen, only because it started to rain again. So Cape Town was well prepared for the risk of water shortage, but it was not enough to make the city really safe for the inhabitants and for investors. So the City Council decided to develop a resilience strategy based on a framework that I will present in the next part. This strategy relies on people making things happen, which naturally brings us to that 4th level of action, building water-wise communities. These are the water-wise communities, those decision makers, technicians, regulators, or citizens who develop a shared vision that allows them to work together on specific actions. In the 3 cities we visited in our trip today, we could see that this level of action was the key element. Now, in order to finish our world tour, I'd like to show you another short movie that displays a few more cities that have endorsed the principles. This movie is a couple years old, so it doesn't have the latest cities, but it, let me start it. Share the screen. Okay, so that should work. Okay. So I'd like to finish this overview of the principles with the building blocks for implementation that are listed here, and some illustrations of what was done in the cities we just traveled through. It's all about the people, the individuals who collectively move our cities towards becoming more and more water-wise. A strong vision in San Francisco and Sydney, how San Francisco embarked their regulators to enable water reuse and recycling. The capacity building, we didn't talk much about that, but all those cities have a strong partnership with research and universities that are key to moving forward. The example of the city water resilience approach used in Cape Town to strengthen their global strategy for planning. And instruments such as tariffs that Cape Town used to support behavior change. So before we move on to part 3, I'd like to give you a moment to make the connection with your work. What is your contribution to driving action towards water-wise cities through your activities? You can choose several of those building blocks for actions. What is it that you do that contributes to one of or more of those building blocks? Okay, we're going to look at the results. So not surprising, increasing knowledge and capacities. We have an audience of that's well connected to research and university context. But we also have quite a strong responses on governance that enables collaboration and the systems thinking tools. So great, thanks for sharing this. This is really nice to see. I propose that we now move on to our next part, which is about a couple tools. We've all heard that phrase, you can't fix what you don't see. And you guys working close to the research environment know that well. You need to be able to set what the problem is before you can find the solution. So this is what these frameworks are about. I'd like to take you through 2 frameworks that support the journey to water-wise cities. The first one is the City Water Resilience Approach, which I've mentioned under Cape Town. And the second is the Water Sensitive Cities Index. The City Water Resilience Approach was developed by ERIP with the Rockefeller Foundation as part of the 100 Resilient Cities initiative. And it really follows the city resilience framework that was developed already for the 100 resilient cities, but applies a water lens to that city resilience framework. Their methodology is fully available online, and their strength is that they have a strong focus on governance and whole of the city resilience. The water, and maybe one more thing I'd like to say about the city water resilience approach is that it's it doesn't aim at benchmarking. It aims at triggering the right questions amongst the urban stakeholders of a city, but it doesn't give you a way to compare cities to each other. The Water Sensitive Cities Index was developed pretty much at the same time with the Cooperative Research Centre for Water Sensitive Cities in Australia. And their tool is also fully available on their website, though the whole guidance on how to run the workshops is made available only to certified city workshops providers. But people can sign up to become a city workshop provider easily, and I did that a couple months ago. So it's really available to all. They just want to make sure people are trained at applying that methodology. It has, their strength is that it has a stronger focus on community engagement, livability, and water services. And the resilience is kind of, it comes from those things, but it's not really at the center of their approach. So the city water resilience approach is based on the 4 dimensions of the city resilience, which are leadership and strategy, planning and finance, infrastructure and ecosystems, and health and well-being. And each of those dimensions of resilience has 3 elements of resilience that are associated to it. And if you look at that wheel, they're shifted a little bit so that you always have one of those elements of resilience that sits between 2 of those dimensions. The first dimension of resilience is leadership and strategy. It's about building empowered communities, having a strategic vision, and coordinated basin governance. Under each of those elements of governance, they have a few indicators where they guide the users of the methodology through asking themselves the right questions on those topics. The second dimension of resilience is planning and finance, and there the elements of resilience are effective regulations and accountability, adaptive and integrated planning, and sustainable funding and finance. Now, if we move on to infrastructures and ecosystems, there it's about effective disaster response and recovery, effective asset management, and protected natural environments. And that's where there's quite a big difference also with the next framework I'll present. The infrastructure component does not have a very strong dimension on resource recovery. It's only embedded in the protection of natural environments, but it's not very strong. And the last dimension of resilience, which is really which needs all of the 3 other ones to be successful, also has 3 elements of resilience: equitable provision of essential services, healthy urban spaces, and prosperous communities. Now, this assessment was applied to Cape Town, as I mentioned earlier, and the type of results that comes out is that wheel with different colors for the different grades that you get on all of the indicators. The grades are self-assessed, and there's no real guidance on what would give you a 4 or a 1. It's just the intent is really to make the people think, the urban stakeholders think about their cities and identify where it is that they have the biggest issues. So this was the basis for Cape Town to develop their water strategy. Now let's move on to the Water Sensitive Cities Index. This index is articulated around those 7 pillars: ensuring good water governance, increasing community capital, achieving equity of essential services, ensuring quality of urban spaces, improving ecological health, promoting adaptive infrastructure, and improving productivity and resource efficiency. They started developing that framework based on that urban water transition phases concept. If you've already listened to some Australians presenting, you might have seen that graphic before. It's about thinking that our cities have evolved from being water supply cities back in the 19th century to water sensitive cities today, or trending to be water sensitive cities today. This evolution is the result of a series of social and political drivers that are listed up at the top of that graphic. And the result is that we build different types of infrastructure in response to those drivers. And so the aim of this index now, the Water Sensitive Cities Index, is to inspire change both in the social and political drivers, so that we will build the infrastructures that deliver water sensitive cities. It's about moving from exclusive large-scale centralized infrastructure and institutions to more flexible, integrated, and complex infrastructures and institutions. It's about providing more adaptability, flexibility, and resilience. Those urban water transitions from our current systems to water-sensitive cities are relying on those three pillars: the enabling structures, the on-ground practices, and the social and political capital, leadership, learning, and all that. The index is structured around 7 goals and 34 indicators. The first 3 goals are more about governance and wider water management issues. And the last 4 goals, or the next 4 goals, are more about the infrastructures or the systems and the services themselves, about improving productivity and resource efficiency, improving the ecological health, ensuring quality of urban space, so the whole well-being part, and promoting adaptive infrastructure. And the results can be visualized on a spider web graph as shown to the right there. Now, if we take this example of Melbourne, for example, that has run through this assessment, you have either the results presented in the spider web, or you can also look at the results in terms of progress towards the water sensitive city. So they call this the city state progress, and it looks like that target on the left. It's a target, and it shows you how much progress you've made already towards being water sensitive city. So in the case of Melbourne, it's 20%, but they've already done all the things they could do to be a waterway city. So in terms of protecting their waterways. Now, what's interesting with that index is that it also allows international benchmarking, because they have this very thorough guideline in the grading of each of the indicators. So if it's from the grading is from 1 to 5 on each of the indicators. If you give a 5, there's a clear definition of what a 5 is or a 3 is, and so that can enable to actually compare between cities. And the good thing about this is that it can support good communication and knowledge exchange between cities, sharing about their progress towards being water sensitive or water-wise cities. I'm going to stop here, and I'd just like to thank the contributors who provided information to build this presentation, and also give you the links to the 2 tools I just mentioned to you. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot to you, Corinne, for this comprehensive presentation and very nice tour all over the world, seeing examples of wiser water management. So we have time now for a few questions. There are 4 questions already in the chat, so I'm going to ask them to you, and I think you can also read, but in any case, I'm going to say them so for all attendees to know about the question. And then we will move to the 2 next presentations. So first one is from Alicia B. She says, you say that we are approaching a no-return point regarding temperature increase. How do you envision the future of water management in 15 years' time, considering today's circumstances?
How do I envision water management in 15 years or 50 years?
15.
15, okay, so quite not so long term.
Yeah, no.
Well, I mean, the impacts are going to be very different from region to region, but there will need to be a change in terms of consumptive use, so making sure that we don't consume as much water from the environment, but also in terms of treatment, I think the impact of the effluent that is being discharged to the waterways might become an issue in a lot of places because of the increase in temperature and lower flows in the rivers. So you know, the things that I see most happening is reducing the intakes and increasing the treatment requirements.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Next question from Elena Soule. She says, thanks for your presentation. My question, what needs to be done to change essential concepts such as using drinkable water for toilets?
Well, it takes a lot of communication. It takes also working with regulators, as we've seen. And I mean, San Francisco is a great example for that, because they are now in all those large buildings, they are now using non-drinkable water for all the flushes. But in order for this to be safe, it has to follow building codes that are well done. You have to train the people who build those buildings also, so that no mistakes are made when the piping is done. So it takes training of a whole suite of professionals, the regulators, the planners, and the people who build the buildings.
Thank you. From next one is anonymous attendant, so she or he didn't put his or her name. But yeah, he or she says, thank you for your great presentation. How can we raise awareness and create water-wise communities from a citizen's perspective? What is the role of science and education for sustainable development? Do you see space for optimism for the future in this sense? Well, a lot of questions basically about a citizen's perspective, science and education, and
yeah, so I strongly believe in citizens' involvement and educating citizens, so making scientific knowledge accessible to citizens. And by accessible, I don't mean just sharing a report, but transforming that information into something that they can actually understand and digest. I think that citizens have a great role to play in their behaviors. And this is all something that is very strong in the last index that I shared, the Water Sensitive Cities Index. If you look into that framework, you'll see that there's some really good guidance on that.
Good. Now we have Clara Rivera. She's asking, what about medium-sized cities with perhaps less resources but similar problems?
Yeah, I mean, as she said, similar problems, probably. Less resources in terms of human capacity, I guess. That indeed can be an issue. And my recommendation for medium-sized cities that are not well connected to research and a scientific community would be to start those partnerships. Because what I've observed is that all those cities who are forward, who have made progress, are all cities that have a strong connection to research partners and universities.
Great. And we'll take the last question now before moving to the next two speakers. It's from Ignacio Rodriguez, Roda. And he is asking, do you think we can live this transition to conventional engineers who love concrete? He says.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a huge challenge, though. But that's what I was saying when we need to educate our engineers. I'm not talking. Obviously, now I think this thinking is quite mainstream in the schools. Mm-hmm. I have the feeling, but I'm working with people who are working in utilities, and it's not it's not mainstream yet. But I think that it's all our combined efforts which will make it mainstream. It's about talking about it and using examples and showing what's happening in other places. But I'm an optimistic, so I do believe they can be trained.
Thanks a lot, Corinne, and thanks all the participants for the questions. I think we can move to the next presentation now, to the second presentation from today. She's Regina Gnirss. Regina, she is civil engineer specializing in water and wastewater technologies and employed since 1991 within Berliner Wasserbetriebe, which is the utility with a public-private model in charge of the integrated water management in Berlin. Hello, Regina.
Yes, hello.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Since 2007, she's the head of the Research and Development Department of Berliner Wasserbetriebe, and she also serves as a member of the International Water Association Strategic Council, the Supervisory Board of the UFZeta, and in specialized DWA working groups. She's author of more than 40 journal publications and 1 patent, and she has more than 1,200 citations. Regina will talk today about how Berlin is striving to relate on its own water sources as a successful experience of sustainable water management. So the virtual floor is yours, Regina. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for the kind introduction. I hope you hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, but maybe you can put the presentation mode. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, everything fine. Yeah,
now,
thanks.
perfect.
So we started the journey with Corinne. So I have to thank her personally to have this experience. And we are also very clear looking on the integrative approach to fulfill the SDGs. And I just given here the example of the German association, which is in parallel for us as the International Water Association, very strongly looking to fulfill this goal 6, clean water and sanitation. And I would like to point out all these issues and approaches on the Berliner Wasserbetriebe. So in Berlin, we already have 100% citizens connected to pure drinking water. And the service is 24 hours all over the year. And we have 99% of the citizens connected to the centralized sewer system. The water of the 1% is also treated biologically, but decentralized treated. Yeah, where is Berlin located? Just here on the map of Europe, you see in the northeastern part the city of Berlin. The map, what is pointed out in light green, you see the waterworks with the protected water areas, and you should not talk to the people of architect because 25% of the city area is protected due to water. You may have the question, why is that given? I can answer that in the end. However, it's important. If you want to rely on your source, you have to protect it. And Berlin is giving 99% of the drinking water comes right under the ground. Yeah, we've already heard the challenges for the city. So Berlin is a growing unified city. Yeah, we have about 3.7 million inhabitants, and we are still having one small city integrated in our water infrastructure. So if you know that one of the city infrastructures are more than 150 years old, you will not find a car which is driving this long time, and the infrastructure is still in a very good conditions. And even the oldest pipes last the longest. So if you have the brickstone pipes, so old not always means that it's in a bad shape if you keep it in a good condition. The city area, you've already seen for the sewer and sanitation, we are responsible for both, for water and sanitation in Berlin. We are also dealing with the stormwater. We have in the older part, we have the combined sewer system. It's about 25% of the city area. However, from the pipe length, it's a bit longer. If you travel in our sewer system, you could travel from Berlin to Tokyo. Yeah, just to imagine how much infrastructure you have to keep in shape. The increasing surface ceiling is still an important issue if you look on climate change, if you look on cooling effect for stormwater. Also in Berlin, we have to look, we have two river systems, a Spree and a Havel with river and lakes together. However, the water flow is just 10 to 30 cubic meter per second, which is a factor 1,000 lower than River Rhine, where, for example, Amsterdam take the drinking water from. Yeah, so I wanted to talk today about the Berlin journey to become a water-wise city. And I don't want to go into much details because Corinne already explained it quite good. And it's a very good condition, the approach that we transform the engineers we have who are used to concrete to water-wise systems. And I will show you that we do it with our people on site if we really manage to leave the silo thinking. We are capable to find new ideas together. And in Berlin, the journey started on the IWA conference reuse. So we had assigned, you see it on the picture, with the president of the IWA, Carla, with my head CEO of the Berliner Wasserbetriebe, and the head of the environmental agency of the Senate of Berlin. We do networking not just on the international level, but also on the European level. We do it in architecture with metropolis. We are also by collaboration with Paris, Amsterdam, and Copenhagen or New York, working very closely together. If we have some things in common, we share the knowledge wisely. And the German association you've already seen on the SDGs on the beginning. That's also a very strong issue because all the directives are written down in this association. So what is our vision in Berlin? And that's not only a vision, but also reality in one of the quartiers. We refer, that's a specific German expression also for Berlin, a quartier, and people really rely on their quartier. A lot of things like social and cultural life, but also working is done in very small districts in Berlin. That's also historically abounded. So the vision is a sponge city, to create a citywide network of landscape streets, linear parks, the linking of neighborhoods and parks. We have the highest number of road trees. Yeah, I don't know if you ever enjoyed a street tree. However, it cools. Yeah, it has a high effect. You really feel it if you cycle through the city. If you're going along a street without trees, it's much hotter. And if you could stand in front of a red traffic light and a tree is close enough, that's very comfortable in summer times. Yeah, what is a sponge city? I assume that not everybody is understanding. So this graph will show you what it means for us architects and engineers. It means that we keep the stormwater, even if you have sealed the area in your quartier. You have the chance to have green roofs, who store the rainwater. You have the chance to have parks with some swales where you keep the water. And the goal is that you have less overflow in the central sewer. I have to admit that the stormwater which we get in the city is mostly not clean. Yeah, you have to introduce some treatment just to raise the issue of trace organics coming from the facades, from coloring, or from the roof material. So in Germany, there is a number that about 50% of the pesticides are used in cities. Yeah, you already seen the governance issues. In Germany, we follow the EU Water Framework Directive. I think that's quite a challenge due to the basin connected, because you really look on a larger environment, not only on your own city. It says you should avoid urban heat, loss of biodiversity, pure quality of urban open space and surface waters. And therefore we have to apply sustainable integrated water resource management for high quality of surface and groundwater. You've already seen the curve by Corinne, that you have the highest temperature if the sun shines in downtown. So you have to do a change of the cities to have more green, to get a mixture of suburban residential where the temperature is much lower, and that goal can be reached. You see here, for example, the expression of our surface water treatment plant we installed to protect the Lake Tegel, which directly is linked to the waterworks by managed aquifer recharge. And you see that with this plant, and it's very nicely put into scene. Yeah, you see it looks like a ship and it's very green. The biodiversity is increased by really installing like plants normally on the Baltic Sea. We reduce nutrients and avoid eutrophication. We fulfill the bathing water directive, so for the recreation. And we also reduce trace organics. You see the black large silo on the side. Yeah, so we already have the path done to protect our water ways for drinking water in a semi-closed water cycle. We also have a lot done in knowledge capacity building to avoid the silos within Berlin, because we only have one city and we should have one vision for all infrastructure companies dealing with this city. So all 6 infrastructure utilities created a co-working space called InfraLab Berlin. We have meetings and talks and exchange projects. And we also offer young entrepreneurs the opportunity to experiment with us, to test and realize their ideas for a sustainable future. And again, you realize that we transfer the conventional engineers into sustainable thinking engineers. So that's a long journey, and I think it's important to take your employees with you. We also use a lot of planning tools here. I just brought the example for a load management. Yeah, we explain to our operators what they reach if they use a centrifuge or the air blowers a bit later. We want to introduce as much regenerative energy in our sewage plants as possible. So we signed the climate agreement with the Senate to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 40% till last year. And we have the new one where we want to be climate neutral till the end of 2035. We have a lot of pilot plants running to get this goal to a success. However, it's questionary because we have to increase our effort for trace organics that consumes energy. So it's always like earning some thing, but spending more because of quality issues. Yeah, implementation tools, we found out that specifically for the transition of the cities, Corinne also said that very, very highly on the water-wise communities, you have to go this journey together. So we have city talks. Here as an example, the approach to integrate green roofs on private houses. But however, we also have a mobile technology, for example, the web-based early warning system for bathing water quality information. So the people can use a web-based tool to look if they can go swimming or not. I have the example with me later on. However, the main discipline we have to do is the managed of the partly closed water cycle. We already have the EU goal of zero waste. And I think if the city relies on their own water resource, here you see an artificial lake, infiltration lake. We are lucky in Berlin because we have very good soil condition. So there is a high filtration rate, transformation, mineralization, and absorption. And if you ensure that you have a retention time more than 50 days, we reach the same goal as with technical infrastructures, which would need much more energy. And I also brought a small movie with you from our R&D project Drinkwave, where we explain the water reuse, how it works for a large city as Berlin. I hope it will work and you will listen to the tone.
Water is the basis of all life on Earth. It makes up 62% of our bodies. And water covers around 70% of the planet's surface. But only 3% of that is fresh water, which is constantly renewed through a cycle of evaporation and rainfall. For us, it seems natural having instant access to clean tap water. In fact, all the water on Earth has existed for millions of years and has been reused ever since. All the water we use is cleaned after we use it and returned into the environment. For us in Berlin, water reuse is especially important, since our tap water comes from right here, just below the surface of our city. In water conservation areas, our drinking water is abstracted by sinking wells into the water underground. This groundwater is formed from rain and the seepage of water from rivers and lakes, also called bank filtration. Because the amount of naturally occurring groundwater is often not enough, we supplement it from surface water in order to meet demand. In our waterworks, we use natural treatment steps to produce drinking water and distribute it to households and industry. After use, wastewater is collected in the sewerage system and pumped to treatment plants. There, nutrients are removed before the water is reintroduced into the lakes and rivers, and through the bank filtration, the cycle begins again. Global climate change has a direct impact on landscapes and water resources. Droughts drying out rivers and lakes, woodlands turning to scrubland. Clean and safe drinking water is becoming increasingly scarce. As well as all that, cities are growing larger and need more drinking water. So, what can be done? We are working on the Drinkwave project, together with various partners who are expert in water reuse technologies. Technical processes such as high-pressure membrane filtration require a lot of energy and produce concentrate streams which are hard to deal with. With Drinkwave, we're testing a resource-saving and natural treatment system, SMART, a sequential managed aquifer recharge technology. With these modern techniques, we can ensure that the water of today continues to provide the safe drinking water of tomorrow.
Yeah, so you've at the expression of the water reuse scheme we use in Berlin. And here on the graph, I just want to indicate that it's not, if you look on the right side, you see a typical drinking water plant, which is in the north of Berlin, where we have less part of surface water related to treated wastewater. And on the left side, you see the water cycle, which is a bit closer with the highest share in Lake Tegel, which still fulfills the EU Water Directive on a high level. However, we are convinced that we look on our sources, so treatment on the sources. So that's medication you see here. And if we use less medication, that could also help to prevent compounds in the water cycle. And I think that is important for the point, water-wise communities, to have to be aware what you use and what you put in the water cycle, because water is not consumed as energy, but water is only used, as was clearly shown in the picture, in the movie. Yeah, what we use for a systematic approach with our other services here, just the example of Berliner Regenwasseragentur, that's also reality, the buildings you see here. The district already fulfills the 1% I've shown in the beginning. And we reached that just by a clear mandate with the Senate of Berlin and Berliner Wasserbetriebe working together. We have a clear implementation done. We have public relations built up to explain it in private and also in consultants. And the networking is going on. So here see you on the top, the silo working of land use in cities as it is in Germany in the moment. And on the bottom, you see the ideas we have from the future, the ideas we share, where we really are open-minded to do some compromises. So you introduce some tools on private houses and you get a reduction in tariffs. So some expressions from the swallows, you have advantages. However, the areas look as green and nice when they are installed. We still have some maintenance issues to solve because people are not really used to these open-minded things. The last case study we implemented in our water-wise journey, I really want to make advertisement for our early warning system, which is unique in Germany and also in Europe. It really works on a measurement in surface water for bacteria. We have a risk-based prediction model for hygienic quality parameters, and we are really able to warn the people with a very simple traffic light system on a web-based tool, if they can go swimming or if there was some spill off by a stormwater event. And the time is exactly calculated if there is impact on the bathing site or not. So a clear suggestion to the people to use water carefully, a clear suggestion, enjoy swimming. However, we cannot ensure it for 100% of the days, but we want to warn you. Yeah, that's our journey in Berlin. I hope I could cover some of your questions, and I thank Corinne for choosing Berlin as presenting how the journey is. It's exciting, however, it's challenging, and we don't fulfill everything what we have in our mind. However, we are on our path, and it's a good way. Thanks a lot.
Thank you a lot, Regina, for this very nice presentation on the Berlin case study trip to a wise city. So please, I encourage all the attendants to post questions in the Q&A chat, but we will keep them for the last part of the session. So we are now moving to the third presentation, and then you will be able to give to propose questions to Regina and Joana, or to make any other comment, or also to Corinne, or any aspect you would like to, again, make questions or comment. So the third speaker today is Joana Castellar. She's an agricultural engineer with a PhD in the framework of the sustainability program of the Polytechnic University of Catalonia in Spain. During her PhD, she developed an innovative design concept called wet wall, which combines green wall structures with constructed wetlands features for the treatment of urban wastewaters. Currently, she's working at the Catalan Institute for Water Research as research technician on a Horizon 2020 project, EDICITNet. She oversees the conceptualization and development of online tools to facilitate the network and knowledge sharing among urban food-related initiatives, as well as to assess the performance of such initiatives in terms of urban challenges and ecosystem services tackled. So she will talk today on how to use them and how to use NBS to increase circularity in cities. Joana, go ahead.
Thank you, Kim, for the nice introduction. And before starting, I also would like to thank you, Regina and Corinne, for such inspiring presentations. It's always nice to open our minds and see from other perspectives. So thank you very much for your presentations. So basically, I will talk to you about circular nature-based solutions in cities. So I really hope I can give you some insights about how nature-based solutions can contribute to a wise management of resources in cities. Just to put you a little bit in context, we're going to start our journey talking a little bit about what does it take to make a solution a nature-based one. Then we're going to move forward to explore a little bit how nature-based solutions can be designed under circular framework and how they can actually address circularity in cities. Then I will talk a little bit about our experience in the development of tools for nature-based solutions mainstreaming and give you some take-home messages. So let's start. So as you might know, plenty of definitions for nature-based solutions have emerged in the past years. And this kind of definitional wealth has led to a certain confusion within nature-based solution community concerning what is and what is not a nature-based solutions. In this sense, biodiversity seems to be the key term across different definitions, such as the one from the European Commission and the IUCN, which are the ones that are more well accepted nowadays. From my point of view, I believe that biodiversity in the scope of nature-based solutions now it's mostly framed as bringing green, tangible innovations into cities or preserving the existing green. On top of that, this kind of green factor behind the nature-based solution concept is reinforced by how the term nature is perceived by people. An example of that is if you ask anyone which color they relate to nature, the word nature, most of the answer, I'm pretty sure, will be probably green. In our last research, an example also of that is that in our last research, we asked more than 150 experts all over the world to decide the names of 32 nature-based solutions, and almost all names contain green terms, such as the word green itself, or greening, vegetated, planted, and etc. Our results also reveal a certain resistance to accept planning and management approach as nature-based solutions. Such examples are planning tools or bioindicators for monitoring nature-based solutions performance, or even more practical policies or measures, such as, for example, limiting the access to preserved areas. Anyway, we cannot deny that the green benefits are the new global trend. And in this sense, I truly believe that green tangible structures make the changes in the city's landscape more real, more visible, more touchable. Therefore, I believe that this can help make the nature-based solution concept more easily accepted by a wide range of actors from public, private sectors, and civil society. And they are all needed to move forward to a more sustainable city. So it's very important that they all agree in something. So nevertheless, it is important to note that considering the green factor as a requirement for defining a solution as a nature-based one, we kind of discard a whole range of solutions which replicates natural process, however, does not imply the green factor. An example of that is for example, the process of bioinfiltration, which is performed by infiltration trench, which is a sustainable urban drainage approach, or even other solutions such as anaerobic digestion, which clearly has a microbiodiversity and replicates natural processes such as biodegradation. Therefore, I consider that two aspects are very important for systematic mainstreaming nature-based solutions as a concept. First, we need to reach an agreement about the meaning of biodiversity in the scope of nature-based solutions. Second, we need to also consider these known green solutions, either the technologies or the existing green infrastructures, as part of the urban nature-based system. No more parallel paths, no more like green against gray. We need to move forward to a more integrative and systematic way of applying both technologies. So, okay, but anyway, the question is still remain, what is a nature-based solution? In this sense, I believe that as all new trends, nature-based solution concept will keep evolving for some time. But for now, we can say that there are three main categories that help us to understand the criteria to define a solution as a nature-based one. First, how they are visually perceived by people. And as I said, people are more tend to associate the solutions to green tangible structures. Second, how they function. So nature-based solutions should function as a no-intensive and local adapted solutions, which actually makes this easier for us to distinguish them from the conventional approach and technologies. Third, what are they providing or what they should provide to society? So nature-based solutions should provide a set of environment, social, economic benefits along with the provision of ecosystem services. So in our last publication, we actually developed and conceptualized these criteria by proposing a novel classification for nature-based solutions. In this classification, we mainly distinguish the solutions in two main typologies: nature-based solution units that are standalone green technologies or green urban spaces, which can be combined with other solutions, nature-based or not. Some examples of that are green walls, green roofs, urban forests, parks, community gardens, constructed wetlands, and so on. The another typology we propose are nature-based solutions interventions that refers to the act of intervening in an existing ecosystems or even in an existing nature-based solution unit by applying techniques to support natural process. Some examples of such interventions are, for example, river daylighting, river bank stabilization, or composting for soil quality improvement, and so on. So moving forward, I would like to talk a little bit about how nature-based solutions can be designed on the circular framework, because I believe this is a promising strategy to close resource loops in cities. So in this sense, I believe that it's very important to explore nature-based solutions as part of a large system in which many interconnections might take place, either with other solutions or with local urban chains. So as you can see in this figure, nature-based solutions designed on the circular frame can promote the recirculation of resources such as water and materials, and thus reduce the withdrawal and exploitation of natural capital. Nature-based solution also acts as some kind of buffer, reducing the load of contaminants going to the environment, mainly when they are using as a wastewater treatment, for example. This buffering capacity can help preserve the ability of nature itself on providing ecosystem services to the cities. So, but what about practical examples? So let's talk about some circularity challenges in cities. For me, in terms of water management, the challenge is how we can promote on-site safe reuse under decentralized setting instead of importing new water and nutrients for no potable reuses. So And going a little bit beyond that, it's also to think in a systematic way, how can we connect inputs required and outputs produced by the nature-based solutions with local urban chains and other solutions. So an example of that is, for example, let's think about a green wall in a building that is designed for water treatment and reuse. One can use byproducts or waste materials from local urban chains for the construction of the modular green wall, and also use these kind of byproducts as a filter media for this treatment, for the filtration, instead of using manufacturing raw materials for this purpose. Meanwhile, the gray water is treated and the nutrients are being recovered and stored in this technology. These nutrients can be later reused, for example, as fertilizers for local agriculture, or of course, according to sanitation regulations and things like that. Will depend on the type of water we are treating and the type of contaminants we have. But there are a lot of potential in this matter. This approach has an effect in reduce the demand of potable water for non-potable reuses, can also help reduce the CO2 emissions and energy demand for producing the fertilizers in the first place, or related to the process of producing manufactured materials or extracting raw materials. It also can reduce the accumulation of reactive compounds into the environment, such as nitrogen, and thus reduce the cascade effect. Well, but what about food? In terms of food production in city, I believe that the challenge is to promote urban farming as a systematic solution. In this sense, nature-based solutions such as community garden, composting, and, for example, constructed wetlands can be combined for a better management of resources, in which community gardens will promote a sustainable production of local food and biomass. Composting will help on the management of organic waste and the improvement of soil quality. And the constructed wetlands can be used to treat the wastewater for reuse on the plots, thus reducing the water, closing the water cycle and recovering nutrients once again. So even though such conceptual clarifications and examples are very much needed to move forward to a novel way of thinking, it's equally important to develop tools to support this transition, as Corinne and Regina said, and gave us some examples. In the past 5 years, several tools have been developed, especially under the scope of H2020 European projects in the scope of nature-based solutions. There are plenty of types, from more like informative catalogs, handbook, guidelines, to more modeling-based tools. So what I want to share with you a little bit now, it's our experience in this matter. So the first tool that I want to present to you is the ExitNet Toolbox, which is being developed under the scope of ExitNet project, which is focused on facilitating the network and implementation of nature-based solutions in cities. So the toolbox is an interactive space to share knowledge and to learn from edible nature-based solutions. It is focused on enhancing the network among all kinds of edible nature-based solutions, from, for example, community gardens, orchards, local markets, and etc. So the ExitNet Toolbox, as you can see here in the screen, this nice map, the toolbox itself is providing several public onlines, and one of them is this interactive catalog, which can be seen in this map format here. This interactive catalog, any person can create profiles for their edible nature-based solutions, and these solutions will appear in the catalog in the map. Such profiles showcase technical information about these initiatives and also offers a set of interactive functions to make it a true social network for users to exchange knowledge. Anyone can browse and find the closest edible nature-based solutions to either interact with, learn from, or even to buy local products. But first, now we are in the moment that we are building such networks. So Please feel free to share the link of the toolbox within your networks. We would very much appreciate it. Besides the catalog, we also provide a design and planning tool, which enables users to create their own initiatives by giving insights about resources needed and food potential in terms of yield and production. We also provide a performance assessment tool, these graphs that you can see here, the star graphs, which enables users to compare the performance of these initiatives in terms of sustainability, urban challenges, and ecosystem services provided. We also have a set of qualitative assessments in which participants of these initiatives can share their experiences in participating in such initiatives. In terms of how these initiatives can achieve sustainable development goals, what are the engagement motivations, and so on. It's kind of feedback from the participants from these initiatives. In terms of tools for supporting nature-based solutions for urban water sanitation, we have been working on the project SNAP, and this online interface that you see here brings several functionalities. As for example, this first one that you're seeing here is a decision support system to help users find the most suitable nature-based solutions according to parameters such as the type of water to be treated, pollutant reduction targets, and also desired reuses according to international standards. We also provide fact sheets, very complete fact sheets for each one of the nature-based solutions. These fact sheets include general description of the nature-based solution, basic technical information in terms of design and performance, and description of potential co-benefits to be provided by these nature-based solutions. Finally, we provide also a long-term functioning database with more than 300 cases of studies in which the data can be extracted. Also, the users of this platform can have the opportunity to share their knowledge and help us update this living database. Anyone can add a case of study, so you are all welcome to help us building this nice database. So now I would like to talk to you about some take-home messages, some things that I think it's important for us all to think a little bit more about it. So as I said, I think nature-based solutions, it is a popular concept, a hot topic right now, but yet it's a really novel concept. Therefore, it's normal that there is a huge effort in validating the performance and the positive effect of nature-based solutions in comparison to other conventional treatments, technologies, and infrastructures. At the same time that this technical argumentation is very important to convince private sector, urban planners, policymakers to join this transition towards greener and sustainable cities, I also think that nature-based solutions should be framed as not only a technological advancement, but emerge as an intent to move towards new values concerning our understanding of what is nature and what is the relevance of nature to the long-term survival of our species. And in this sense, I also think that connectivity is the key. Nature-based solutions, as I said during the presentation, can be standalone units or interventions, but they also need to be considered as part of a complex urban living system. And by understanding these interconnections between nature-based solutions and the surrounding environment, we can help diversify the provision of ecosystem services, we can help close resource loops in cities, and even compensate some possible disservices. It's also, from my point of view, that it's also important to identify during the process of co-design and implementation of these solutions, supporting actions and elements that are crucial for the long-term functioning of nature-based solutions. Some examples of that are, for example, business model, capacity building, social engagement activities to make people feel part of the process and own the process. Also, last but not least, I think it's also in the process of design and implementing nature-based solutions, I also think it's very important to consider the local conditions in which these solutions are being implemented, such as the existing governance mechanisms, political and social dynamics. So to finalize, I would like to thank the Catalan Institute for Water Research, the Edible Seeds Network project, and of course the European Commission for the funding, the SNAP project, and the CERCA institution. Thank you very much for your attention, and it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I will be glad to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joana. So I will ask you to unshare your screen, and please, to the three speakers, Corinne, Regina, and Joana, you can switch on your camera and be ready for additional questions. That I will encourage again all the attendees to post their questions. We have already a few questions. One is from the anonymous attendant still, so we haven't discovered who is she or he. But to Joana, she says, or he says, inspiring presentations, thank you all. Joana, do you consider citizens, when identifying nature-based solutions, co-creating ideas that can then be adopted at the citizen level?
Yes. So as I said, I think it's very important the citizens' engagement, not only in the process of identifying nature-based solutions, but co-designing them, in order to make sure that these solutions keep working on time. So yes, of course, there are several methodologies that Corinne talk about, some of them, but it's truly very important to engage them in the whole phases of the implementation of nature-based solutions, yes.
There's a question for Regina from Alicia B. What are the main barriers you found on Berlin's journey to sustainable water management? Are they economic, political, or human related?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I see that it was in the beginning political. Yeah, that people wanted to avoid to go a new pathway, to have new solutions implemented, because as you've seen in the last lecture, the options are rising. Yeah, so you have to make 3 or 4 decisions, and that's not so easy. And so for us, the main barriers were to really agree with the legal issues that they are going this way. I think the citizens were easier to prepare, and they were open-minded, and they don't see the risk so much. But if you have the authorities, they always see the risk. Yeah, for example, health issue. They came and say, if you have this flies, and if you have this pollution, yeah, it's more complicated to keep in shape. You've seen on these slides always a clean side. That's not the reality. You need a lot of stuff to clean it up in the cities. So I think we have to go this way together to find out how much costs do you have in the maintenance part for the natural-based solutions, because we have to keep that in mind. They are not so nicely as we have them in the beginning of the pictures, not within a city.
Mm-hmm. Good. Now we have there was a question actually from Corinne to Joana, but probably you can formulate yourself, no, Corinne, and it's related a bit to the health issue that Regina was mentioning.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very good connection to what Regina was mentioning. I understood that you promote the reuse for edible products, to produce edible, so food products, and I was wondering what issues do you encounter regarding pathogens and micropollutants that might accumulate in the food products?
Yes. Actually, the idea of water we use for cropping for edible purpose, the idea is to treat the water before the irrigation. So probably you will achieve some certain kind of standards to be allowed to use this for irrigation. But for now in ICRA, we are actually doing some experiments with hydroponics and lettuce, and we are trying to treat the water and produce lettuce at the same time. So it's a hybrid purpose. And what we want to see, it's exactly what you said. We want to see what is accumulated in the biomass of the lettuce, to see what is the healthy issue that sanitary issue that we might have. But it's only in an experimental way. In for practical applications, for now, we need to follow standards to reuse this water for irrigation to avoid the accumulation of contaminants.
Okay, so you're studying that, and
Yes.
hopefully that can then inform new standards.
Exactly, yeah.
And then for pathogens, do you always disinfect before going, for example, in this aquaponics solution producing lettuce? Is the water
Yes.
actually disinfected before?
Yes, we are working with synthetic wastewater. So we are focused on heavy metals and micro pollutants. We are not having the pathogens right now, but we aim to use some experiments with real gray water. And in this sense, when we do so, what we want to do is to do a hybrid system, putting a disinfection before maybe. We want to play with these configurations to see which one is the best one to make sure that we treat the water with less energy consumption and costs, and also provide edible goods.
There was another question from Gnirss saying, well, she says, great talk, Joana, nice project. But it was more or less mentioned in your take-home message, and also now you mentioned this potential combination of green and gray technologies. So I think it was more or less answered already that an hybrid approach could be a solution, a nice solution in some cases, no? Especially at the urban level when there are some space restrictions. So he mentions that.
Yes.
I think we still have, we're good on time, so we have time for some questions. I wanted to ask to Regina. I mean, we've seen amazing progresses in Berlin in this journey to the wise water management. So currently now, what are the challenges that the city is addressing? Are you reinforcing some of the steps you have been taking, or are you dealing with new emerging challenges that the city should deal with?
Since the climate change has dry periods of 6 to 10, 12 weeks in summertime, I have even read that summer will be 6 months in future. The challenge is how to get water for our trees, because the period is too long and the demand is very high. So what they're experimenting is to have heat consistent plants chosen. You have that for a long while in America, in the desert, where people are approached not to use a lawn or other things, but adapted plants. And in Germany, we are looking on climate resistant trees, because the water demand, we cannot fulfill that with stormwater. However, what we are going for is that we really use the ground. We don't make the small cycles. If you balance decentralized systems, the area you need for treatment within the district and the pumping in the whole water cycle with a very effective pumps is not consuming more. So I always say, if you try to choose gray water usage or something else, you always have to compare it to conventional pathways, because our large wastewater treatment plants, which are located close to the city, and the infiltration in the ground can be more energy efficient, especially if we care about trace organics, than if we do small cycles. So I always warn to do everything within a small quartier. However, it has to be done with eco-sociological issues. Not only energy, not only costs, but also the eco and socio parameters. And so consuming place is a great issue in Berlin. We have to use multifunctional areas, and so we yeah, we are looking on this climate change. The heating in the cities, there are more people dying in cause of heat than in cause of flooding in cities, at least in cities.
Nice. And I have another question for Corinne. So we've seen the examples of, well, Berlin, the cities, the ones you propose, but maybe there are some people related to the urban planning in for some cities here as attendants in big or medium cities. So if they would like to join this journey to the waterway cities, from a practical point of view, who they should approach, and how IWA or water cities could help them, could support them into starting this journey, which is probably the most difficult thing, no? When you are thinking about, oh, this is very nice, but how should I start with, no? So how can you help them?
Okay, so first of all, I want to say that the IWA supports the endorsements of the principles for waterwise cities. So if you go to the IWA website, you'll find a link where you can actually endorse the principles and download some resources, also some presentations and things like that you can use yourself to in your work with the other urban stakeholders. And as IWA did for Berlin, the picture was that Regina was showing, once you come to the point where you can rally your different stakeholders around an official endorsement, IWA will support that with, sending someone or having a speech done and promoting that also in the news, that signings, that often also helps rallying at political level, rallying the decision makers. So that's one important thing. And then what I'm doing now with my company, Water Cities, is to support urban stakeholders in doing these assessments, understanding where are the things that I can actually progress on. So more of these workshop approaches with the different urban stakeholders to understand where is it that my biggest issues are. And also these workshops are a great opportunity for awareness raising, for educating the different stakeholders of your city.
Great, thank you. So I don't see more questions in the Q&A chat. So I don't know if you, Corinne, Regina, Joana, wanted to say something else, last word, or it's 2 minutes past 1, so we're on time, but I don't know if something else, last take home message, no? It's everything fine from your side? Okay, so then I just would like to thank you all very much for this session, for this very nice session. It's been really enlightening. So thank you a lot to the speakers. Thank you a lot for all the attendance.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks also very much all the people who is in the backstage. They have prepared the organization and assuring that everything was working smoothly and well. Hopefully we have all learned a little bit more about this wiser water management in cities, which is really needed, not just to deal with the climate change impacts, but as we have seen also to really support achieving the SDGs. No? So thank you very much. Just a little bit of advertisement here that next session for this webinar series is tomorrow at 2 Central European Time. And this one will cover the topic of moving sustainability forward, regenerative tourism as one of the next steps. So about sustainable tourism. You will see the link in the chat section that my colleagues will send now, and you are still in time to get registered if you want, so don't miss it. Your attendance will be more than welcome. So that's it from my side. Just thank you very much and see you hopefully very soon. Hopefully next time we can have some meeting in person, not only virtually. So thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.